Howdy everybody, welcome back to Where and When. The year was 1993. Disney brought us Homeward Bound, The Three Musketeers, 2 sports films, and 2 holiday films. And through their company Hollywood Pictures, they brought us 2 more movies worthy of note. One is the live-action Super Mario Bros. Movie, and the other film, which we'll be discussing today, is Tombstone. Tombstone is widely considered to be one of the greatest westerns of all time. Despite its pretty bad production history, it was a huge success at the box office, and was even released 6 months before another film with the exact same inspiration. Unlike most films of the genre, this is actually based on a true story, that of the lawman Wyatt Earp, played here by Kurt Russell. He and his family moved to a town called Tombstone to make a living, and are joined by a friend named Doc Holliday, played by Val Kilmer. Unfortunately, they attract the attention of vicious outlaws called the Cowboys, the most notable ones being Curly Bill Brocious, played by Powers Booth, and Johnny Ringo, played by Michael Biehn. Wyatt's reputation as a man of the law precedes him, and tensions between the Earps and the Cowboys start rising. When the Cowboys go too far and attack the family, Wyatt and his friends go out for blood and start hunting them down. While this is based on a true story, they do change quite a few things, so we'll be explaining the locations and time frames as shown in the film. I may make another video on this film in the future explaining the differences, but without further ado, let's take a look at where and when Tombstone takes place. With the exception of a few scenes, this film takes place entirely in present-day Cochise County, in southern Arizona. The film opens in a town in Mexico. Since the Cowboys are shown riding here from Tombstone, this places the following shootout in northern Sonora. As mentioned in the film, Doc Holliday is hanging out in the town of Prescott.
See anything of Doc while you were in Prescott?
Yeah, he had a streak when we left, him and Kate.
This was actually true, and Doc frequented the Palace Saloon, so the scene where he plays poker with Ed Bailey is set here. The Earp family meets at a train station in Tucson. Since the same station is where Frank Stillwell ends up being shot, this means that the station is the Southern Pacific Railroad Depot, which eventually became part of the present-day site of Tucson Amtrak. It's worth pointing out that while the Earps did travel to Tombstone by way of Tucson, the train station wasn't built yet. As its name implies, most of the film takes place in the town of Tombstone, located 75 miles southeast of Tucson and 30 miles north of Mexico. Most of the original buildings in this town were destroyed by fires in 1881 and 1882. Wyatt lived in a house 3 doors west of his brother Virgil, who lived on the southwest corner of First and Fremont. All of these houses no longer exist, and Virgil's house is now home to Virgil's Corner Bed and Breakfast. There is a house called the Wyatt Earp House on the opposite side of the intersection, but Wyatt never actually lived there. Doc Holliday and his girlfriend Big Nose Kate stayed at the Grand Hotel, which was destroyed by the 1882 fire and is now replaced by Big Nose Kate's Saloon on Allen Street. After becoming the replacement marshals, the Earp brothers went to the Tombstone Marshal's office on Fremont Street. Most of the bar scenes in this film take place at the Oriental Saloon on Allen Street. First night in town, the Pauline Markham Theater troupe performs at the Birdcage Theater. Now, this is a major anachronism because at this point in the story, the theater didn't exist, so they would have instead performed at the Schieffelin Hall. The original script draft even sets the scene there instead of the Birdcage. Wyatt and Josephine go horseback riding in a mountain forest. Since we see Wyatt walking away from the sunset as he returns to town, this means that the outdoor excursion takes place in the Whetstone Mountains, located 15 miles west of Tombstone. Marshal Fred White was accidentally killed on Allen Street. The film shows him being shot in front of the Oriental Saloon, whereas in real life he was shot in front of the future site of the Birdcage Theater, and Wyatt Earp was in Owen's Saloon. The gunfight between the Earps and the Cowboys is the famous OK Corral shootout. Ironically, in real life, the OK Corral shootout didn't actually happen at the OK Corral, but in a lot next to the rear entrance. It happened on the grounds of C.S. Fly's photo studio on the corner of Fremont and 3rd. The victims of the shootout were buried at Tombstone Cemetery, better known as Boot Hill. Virgil Earp was attacked by cowboys while crossing the intersection of Allen and 5th Street. Morgan Earp was shot while playing pool at the Camp Hatch Saloon. From there, the film follows the Earp posse slaughtering the cowboys wherever they go. One scene in particular shows them back in Tombstone hanging 2 cowboys in front of the Dragoon Saloon. The river shootout, which claims the life of cowboy leader Curly Bill, occurred at a natural spring called Iron Springs. Nowadays, it's called Cottonwood Springs, and it's located in the Whetstone Mountains. As addressed in the original script, the makeshift cowboy camp is also in the Whetstones. For a short while, the Earp posse stayed at a ranch owned by Henry Hooker. It's called the Sierra Bonita Ranch and is located in the Sulphur Springs Valley. The film's climax centers on a gunfight at the Sulphur Springs Canyon.
Oak Grove at the mouth of Sulphur Springs Canyon, 7 o'clock!
This isn't a real place, but let's try to figure out where it is. They travel to the canyon from the ranch in an hour and a half or less, as Arizona sunrise at this point is at 5:40 and the duel is set to take place at 7. The posse travels to the left of Sierra Bonita's location, meaning they're traveling west. This means that the Sulphur Springs Canyon is located in the Galliura Mountains. In real life, Johnny Ringo died at West Turkey Creek Canyon in the Chiricahua Mountains, a good 70 miles southeast of the ranch. After this point, the Earp posse left Arizona and crossed into New Mexico, traveling to Albuquerque. From there, they split up and both parties entered Colorado. Doc traveled to Pueblo, and then Denver, while the rest of the posse rode the train to Trinidad and then took another train to Gunnison. They stayed there for a few months before splitting up and going their separate ways. Doc died in the town of Glenwood Springs, Colorado at the Hotel Glenwood Springs, also known as the Glenwood Sanatorium. The hotel burned down in December of 1945 and is now replaced by a cowboy fashion shop. While in real life he reunited in San Francisco, in the film's final scene, Wyatt reunites with Josephine at the Palace Theater, on the corner of 15th and Blake in Denver. Originally called the Theater Comique, it was renamed to Palace Theater in 1878. It closed down in 1892 and became a boarding house. The building was torn down in 1929, and as of 1997, the entire block is home to a condo called the Palace Lofts. The narrator in the opening lists the cowboys as being originally from Texas.
Attracted to this atmosphere of greed, over 100 exiled Texas outlaws band together to form the ruthless gang recognized by the red sashes they wear.
William Brocious and Sherman McMaster both lived in the city of El Paso. Johnny Ringo lived in the town of Loyal Valley in Mason County. The Clanton family lived on the outskirts of Dallas and then moved to Hamilton. Frank and Tom McClowry briefly lived in the city of Fort Worth, and Billy Claiborne started working as a cowhand in Atascosa County. As mentioned by cowboy Johnny Barnes, one of the theater troupe's previous stops was in the town of Bisbee, just 10 miles north of the Mexican border. At the end of the film, the narrator mentions that Wyatt and Josephine carried out the rest of their lives in Los Angeles, California. Finally, the original script mentions that Wyatt and Josephine spent every winter going prospecting in southeastern California. This is actually true. They would go mining in the Whipple Mountains on the California-Arizona border. They owned a property in the town of Vidal, and the nearby town of Drennon was renamed to Earp. This movie doesn't have a great representation of the passage of time, but it takes place over the course of 3 years. Since it's shown in the film that Tucson and Tombstone are only a couple days apart, this means that the opening scenes of the film take place on November 29th, 1879. Both the Earp family and the Polly Markham Theater Troupe arrived in Tombstone on December 1st, 1879. In real life, Morgan and Doc arrived in Tombstone the following year. The next major event we see is the death of Marshal Fred White, which occurred on October 28, 1880. Curly Bill's following trial, which happens off-screen, took place on December 27th, almost exactly 2 months to the day that White was shot. We next see City Ordinance No. 9, the town law banning the usage of guns in public. This law was put into effect on April 19, 1881. Next event we see is the OK Corral shootout, which occurred on October 26, 1881. Since the train station scene happens a couple of days later, this means the attack on the Earp family occurred on the night of March 18, 1882. In real life, Virgil was ambushed in late December of 1881, 3 months before Morgan's death. This leads us into the Earp Vendetta ride, which only lasted 26 days, and it all began with the murder of Frank Stillwell at the train station on the evening of March 20th, 1882. The funny thing is, between this scene and the river shootout, you can actually pinpoint the days that Wyatt's gang are slaughtering cowboys.
Nobody move.
Nonsense. By all means, move.
Hey, Wyatt. How the hell are you?
The shootout at Iron Springs occurred 4 days after the train station shooting, on March 24th, 1882. The posse arrived at Sierra Bonita on March 27th, and according to a letter by Doc Holliday, they left later that evening. They stayed about 5 miles north of the ranch for a couple of days before leaving the area for good on the morning of the 30th. The film shows them staying at the ranch for at least 2 days after they arrived, meaning they left on the morning of March 29th. Since Ringo's duel takes place on the same day they leave Sierra Bonita, this means that the showdown also takes place on March 29th. In real life, Johnny Ringo didn't die until 3 months later on July 13th. The posse continued their spree for a couple more weeks before finally putting an end to it on the 15th of April, 1882. Now we come to the end of the film. Doc is shown dying right before Wyatt reunites with Josephine. The narrator mentions that they spent the next 47 years together and an abundance of snowfall is shown on screen. So this means that the end of the film takes place in the winter of 1882. In real life, Doc died in November of 1887. Wyatt and Josephine spend the rest of their lives together until the famous lawman's death on January 13th, 1929. Tombstone takes place mostly in the town of Tombstone and other areas in present-day Cochise County, Arizona from the period of 1879 to 1882. Kurt Russell is not the only Wyatt Earp to appear in this film. No! Billy Claiborne, one of the cowboys, is played by Glenn Wyatt Earp, also known as Wyatt Earp III, a fifth cousin of the famous lawman. Earp never gets a close-up in this film, he's only seen in the wider shots. This is because a lot of the scenes he was in ended up on the cutting room floor. Here are the scenes that he appears in.
How much you might call a pounder of the feast? You know what I'd do? I'd take a deal and then crawfish.
Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see more. There's plenty more to come, but until then, well, bye.